The stars had been quiet for 2,000 years. Across the vast galaxy, 17 different alien species lived together in perfect harmony. They called themselves the Galactic Confederation, and they were very proud of their peaceful way of life. Each species had their own special job. The Vorthak were tall, thin creatures with 4 arms who were excellent at mathematics. They could solve any problem with numbers in seconds. The Zephyrians looked like floating clouds of light and were the best diplomats in the galaxy. When any two species had a disagreement, the Zephyrians would talk to both sides and find a solution that made everyone happy. The Nexari were perhaps the most interesting of all. They looked like living crystals that sparkled with different colors. Inside their crystal bodies, they could store vast amounts of information. They were like walking libraries, remembering everything that had ever happened in the Confederation. There were 14 other species, each with their own unique abilities. The bird-like cavalry were excellent at flying between planets to carry messages. The underwater depths could live in any liquid environment and helped with mining operations on water worlds. Every species had found their perfect place in this balanced society. The center of this peaceful civilization was a massive space station called Harmony Prime. It was built like a giant wheel with 17 smaller rings connected to it. Each ring belonged to one of the member species. The rings slowly rotated around a central hub where all the important meetings took place. From far away, it looked like a beautiful dance in space, with each ring moving in perfect timing with the others. War was something that only existed in old history books. No one in the Confederation could remember the last time any species had fought with another. Instead of fighting, they talked. Instead of competing, they cooperated. Instead of trying to be better than each other, they worked together to make sure everyone had exactly what they needed. The Confederation had strict rules about fairness. If one planet had too much food, they would share it with planets that had less. If a species discovered new technology, they had to teach it to everyone else. No one was allowed to have more than they needed, and no one was allowed to have less than they deserved. Captain Kim Ji-won was about to change all of that, though he didn't know it yet. Ji-won was a human, and humans were not part of the Confederation. In fact, most of the alien species had never heard of humans before. Earth was a small planet far away from the main parts of the galaxy where the Confederation lived. Humans had only recently developed the technology to travel between stars. Ji-won stood on the bridge of his spaceship, the Pioneer's Edge, watching Harmony Prime grow larger on his viewing screen. His ship was small compared to the massive station, like a tiny fish swimming toward a whale. But Ji-won was not intimidated. He had been chosen to represent all of humanity in their first meeting with the galactic community. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. There was engineer Park Hana, who kept their ship running smoothly. There was Dr. Lee Mina, who studied alien cultures and languages. There were 20 other humans on the ship, all excited and nervous about meeting aliens for the first time. As they got closer to Harmony Prime, Ji-won could see more details of the station. It was incredibly beautiful, with smooth curves and bright lights. Everything looked perfect and clean. The 17 rings moved in their slow, steady dance, never changing speed, never varying from their planned path. "It's amazing," whispered Park Hana, looking over Ji-won's shoulder at the view screen. "I've never seen anything so perfectly organized." But something bothered Ji-won about the station. He couldn't put his finger on what it was. Everything was too perfect, too organized, too predictable. Where he came from, things were messy and chaotic. Humans argued with each other, competed with each other, and often made mistakes. But they also created beautiful art, made surprising discoveries, and found new ways to solve problems. Looking at Harmony Prime, Ji-won wondered what had happened to chaos in this part of the galaxy. Did these aliens never disagree? Did they never make mistakes? Did they never surprise each other? The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect, emotionless English. "Human vessel Pioneer's Edge, you are cleared to dock at Ring 17. Please follow the guidance lights to your assigned berth. Welcome to Harmony Prime." As their ship moved toward the docking bay, Ji-won noticed something else strange. There were no other ships moving around the station. Everything was still and quiet. On Earth, any busy spaceport would be full of ships coming and going at all hours. But here, nothing moved except for the slow, steady rotation of the rings. "Captain," said Dr. Lee Mina, checking her instruments, "I'm not detecting much radio traffic either. It's like everything is scheduled so perfectly that no one needs to talk to each other." Jiwan nodded slowly. The Confederation had achieved perfect balance, perfect harmony, perfect peace. So why did it feel so wrong to him? Why did this paradise make him feel uneasy? As the Pioneer's Edge docked with a soft thump, Captain Kim Ji-won prepared to step into a world where everything was perfect. He had no idea that his arrival would be the beginning of the end for the Confederation's carefully maintained balance. The docking bay was completely silent when Captain Kim Ji-won and his team stepped off their ship. Everything was perfectly clean and organized. Even the air felt different, too pure, too controlled. There were no sounds of machinery, no voices of workers, no random noises that Ji-won was used to hearing in busy spaceports back on Earth. A group of aliens waited for them in a perfect line. Each alien was from a different species, and they all stood exactly the same distance apart from each other. None of them moved or spoke. They just waited with an eerie patience that made Ji-won's skin crawl. The alien in the center stepped forward. It looked like a tall, thin tree made of silver, metal with branches that moved like arms. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am Coordinator Talvin of the Administrative Council. Please follow the designated path to the preparation chambers. You will be briefed on proper protocols before meeting the High Council." Ji-won looked at his team. Park Hana raised an eyebrow. Dr. Lee Mina was already taking notes on her tablet. The other humans looked confused and a little scared. "Thank you for welcoming us," Ji-won said politely. "We're honored to be here. But we don't need any special preparation. We're ready to meet your leaders now." All the aliens in the line turned to look at each other at exactly the same time, like they were controlled by the same mind. Coordinator Talvin made a sound like rustling leaves. "Preparation is required," it said. "All new species must learn proper balance before meeting the High Council. This is how things are done. This is the way of harmony." The preparation chambers were small, white rooms with no windows. Each human was put in a separate room. Ji-won found himself sitting on a simple white chair, staring at a blank white wall. A soft voice began speaking from hidden speakers in the ceiling. "Welcome to the Galactic Confederation," the voice said. "For 2,000 years we have maintained perfect balance. Every species has found their place. Every individual knows their role. Conflict has been eliminated through proper organization and fair distribution of resources." The voice went on for hours, explaining the rules of the Confederation. Everyone must contribute according to their abilities. Everyone must take only what they need. Personal desires must not interfere with the greater good. Individual expression is permitted only if it serves the harmony of the whole. Ji-won listened with growing unease. These rules sounded reasonable on the surface, but something felt wrong about them. Who decided what each person needed? Who determined what was good for everyone? What happened to people who disagreed? After 6 hours of preparation, the humans were finally allowed to meet the High Council. They were led through long, curved corridors that all looked exactly the same. Everything was clean and perfectly organized, but there was no personality anywhere. No art on the walls, no personal touches, no signs that individuals lived and worked here. The council chamber was enormous and circular. 17 different types of aliens sat around the room in a perfect circle. Each representative sat in a chair designed specifically for their species, and each chair was exactly the same distance from the center of the room. At the center sat the most impressive alien Ji-won had ever seen. It looked like a cloud of swirling energy that constantly changed colors. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am High Coordinator Veltar of the Zephyrians," it said. "We have watched your species from a distance for many years. You are interesting. You create beautiful things, but you also destroy. You work together, but you also fight. You solve problems, but you also create new ones. Ambassador Park Hana, who had been chosen to speak for humanity, stepped forward. She had practiced this moment for months, but now she felt nervous under the gaze of so many alien eyes. "Thank you for this opportunity," she said. "Humans are honored to meet the Galactic Confederation. We hope to learn from your wisdom and contribute to your peaceful society." High Coordinator Veltar's energy form swirled thoughtfully. "Yes, contribution. That is what we must discuss. Every species must find their proper place in our balance. The Vorthak provide mathematical calculation. The Nexari store and organize information. The Kaveri transport messages between worlds. What will humans provide?" Park Hana had prepared for this question. "Humans are creative and adaptable. We're good at solving new problems and finding different ways to do things. We could help with exploration, research, and innovation." The council members all looked at each other silently. Jiwan noticed that they seemed to be communicating without words, like they shared some kind of mental connection. "Creativity," repeated Veltar slowly. "Innovation. These are dangerous concepts. They imply change. Change disrupts balance. Change creates conflict." Dr. Lee Mina whispered quietly to Jiwan, "Captain, look at their eyes." Jiwan looked more carefully at the alien representatives around the room. Mina was right. Something was wrong with their eyes. They all had the same look, empty, distant, like they were not completely present, even as they sat there in their perfect circle. Discussing humanity's future, they seemed somehow absent. "We will consider your application," High Coordinator Veltar announced. "But first, you must demonstrate your commitment to harmony. You must show that you can contribute to balance without disrupting our perfect system." As the humans were led out of the council chamber, Jiwan couldn't shake the feeling that they had just walked into a beautiful trap. Dr. Lee Mina couldn't sleep. It had been 3 weeks since the humans arrived at Harmony Prime, and something was bothering her every night. During the day, everything seemed perfect. The aliens were polite, the station ran smoothly, and everyone followed the rules. But at night, when the corridors were empty and quiet, she heard strange sounds, soft crying, whispered conversations, footsteps that stopped whenever she tried to follow them. Mina was a scientist who studied alien cultures, and her job was to learn everything she could about the Confederation. The aliens had given her access to their great library, a huge room filled with crystal computers that contained all their history and knowledge. But the more she studied, the more confused she became. The historical records were too clean, too perfect. Every war had ended with peaceful negotiations. Every problem had been solved through careful planning. Every species had joined the Confederation willingly and immediately found their perfect role. It was like reading a fairy tale instead of real history. Real history was messy. Real history had mistakes, failures, and unexpected events. But the Confederation's records made it seem like nothing bad had ever happened to anyone. One night, Mina decided to explore the parts of the station that humans weren't supposed to visit. She waited until everyone was asleep, then slipped out of her quarters and started walking through the empty corridors. The main levels of Harmony Prime were beautiful and well lit, but Mina wanted to see what was below. She found a maintenance elevator that required a special keycard to operate. Fortunately, her friend Park Hana was good with electronic locks, and she had taught Mina a few tricks. After a few minutes of careful work, the elevator doors opened. Mina stepped inside and pressed the button for the lowest level. As the elevator descended, she noticed that the walls became darker and more industrial. The perfect, clean design of the upper levels was replaced by bare metal and flickering lights. When the doors opened, Mina found herself in a completely different world. The lower levels were like a hidden city beneath the perfect station above. The corridors were narrow and poorly lit. Strange smells filled the air, and everywhere Mina could hear voices, real voices with real emotions, not the calm, controlled speech of the Confederation representatives. She followed the voices through a maze of corridors until she came to a large open area. What she saw there made her heart race with shock and fear. Hundreds of aliens were living in the shadows below Harmony Prime. But these aliens were different from the ones she had met upstairs. These aliens showed emotion. They argued with each other. They laughed and cried and showed all the feelings that seemed to be missing from the perfect society above. A creature that looked like a crystal bird noticed Mina and approached her. Its crystal body flickered with unstable colors that seemed to change with its emotions. "A human," it said in a voice full of surprise and hope. "You found us. We hoped someone would find us eventually." "Who are you?" Mina whispered. "What is this place?" "I am Kethara," the crystal bird replied. "I was once a Nexari like those you have met above, but I was removed from their society. All of us here were removed." Mina looked around at the hundreds of different aliens living in the shadows. She recognized some of the species from the upper levels, but these individuals were different. They seemed more alive, more real than their perfect cousins above. "Removed? Why?" she asked. Kethara's crystal body flickered sadly. "Because we were not balanced. Because we asked too many questions. Because we created art that made people think uncomfortable thoughts. Because we refused to accept that the Confederation's way was the only way." An alien that looked like a furry bear with 6 arms joined their conversation. "I am Borzel of the Kaveri. I was a poet before they brought me here. I wrote songs about freedom and adventure. The council said my poems made people restless and unhappy with their assigned roles." More aliens gathered around Mina, each telling their story. A Vorthak mathematician who had questioned the council's resource distribution formulas. A Zephyrian diplomat who had suggested that some conflicts couldn't be solved through compromise. A depths engineer who had invented new technologies without permission from the council. "They didn't kill you," Mina observed. "They just hid." Joisu. "Death would have been noticed," Kethara explained. "But if we simply disappear, if we never existed in the official records, then no one asks questions. The perfect balance is maintained." Mina felt sick as she realized what she was seeing. The Confederation's perfect harmony wasn't natural. It was artificial, created by removing anyone who didn't fit into their neat, organized system. "How many of you are there?" she asked. "Thousands," Borzel replied. "From every species in the Confederation. We are the artists, the dreamers, the questioners, the innovators. We are everything that makes life interesting and unpredictable. And they've been doing this for 2,000 years. Since the beginning," Kethara confirmed. "Each generation they identify the troublemakers and bring them here. The ones who remain above learn to stay quiet, to follow the rules, to never question the system. Over time, entire species forget what it means to think for themselves." Mina looked around at the hidden city of the discarded. These aliens were the most human-like creatures she had met since arriving at Harmony Prime. They showed emotions, they had individual personalities, they created and questioned and dreamed. "Your species scares them," Kethara continued. "Humans are creative and unpredictable. You don't follow rules just because someone tells you to. You ask why instead of just accepting because. They will try to balance you, to cut away everything that makes you human." As Mina made her way back to the upper levels, her mind raced with the implications of what she had discovered. The Confederation's paradise was built on a foundation of systematic oppression, and now humanity was walking straight into the same trap that had caught thousands of aliens before them. She had to warn Captain Jiwon and the others, but would they believe her? And more importantly, what could they do about it? Captain Kim Jiwon knew something was wrong the moment Dr. Lee Mina burst into his quarters at 3 a.m. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking as she told him about the hidden levels beneath Harmony Prime and the thousands of aliens living in the shadows. "They're going to do the same thing to us," Mina whispered urgently. "They're going to take away everything that makes us human and lock it away where no one can see it." Jiwon listened carefully to every word. As a military officer, he had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts had been telling him that something was deeply wrong with the Confederation since the day they arrived. "How many humans know about this?" he asked. Just me so far. But we need to tell the others, we need to warn Earth. Before Jiwan could respond, their communication system activated. High Coordinator Veltar's swirling energy form appeared on the screen, even though it was the middle of the night. Captain Jiwan, Ambassador Parkhana, please report to the Council Chamber immediately. We have reached a decision regarding humanity's application to join the Confederation. Jiwan and Mina exchanged worried glances. The timing was too convenient. Had the Confederation been watching them? Did they know about Mina's discovery? An hour later, all the humans on Harmony Prime stood in the council chamber. The 17 alien representatives sat in their perfect circle. But something felt different this time. The air was tense and the aliens seemed more alert than usual. High Coordinator Veltar's energy form pulsed with slow, deliberate colors as it began to speak. After careful consideration, the Galactic Confederation has decided to accept humanity as our 18th member species. This is a great honor. You will be welcomed into our perfect balance. Ambassador Park Hana stepped forward, but her diplomatic smile looked forced. Thank you for this opportunity. What exactly does membership involve? First, human population must be properly distributed, Veltar explained in the same calm, emotionless voice. Earth currently has too many people concentrated in certain areas. 20% of your population will be relocated to colonies, where they can contribute more effectively to galactic harmony. The humans looked at each other in shock. They were talking about moving billions of people like pieces on a chessboard. Second, human cultural expressions must be regulated to prevent disruptive influences. Art, music, literature, and entertainment will be reviewed by the Cultural Balance Committee to ensure they promote harmony rather than conflict. Parkhana's diplomatic mask began to slip. You want to censor our culture? We prefer the term harmonize, Veltar replied. Finally, individuals who demonstrate excessive individuality, creativity, or questioning behavior will be offered voluntary rehabilitation programs to help them find their proper place in our balanced society. The word voluntary hung in the air like a threat. Everyone in the room knew it wouldn't really be voluntary. Captain Jiwan stepped forward, his jaw clenched with barely controlled anger. And if we refuse these generous offers? For the first time since they had arrived, High Coordinator Veltar seemed surprised. The swirling colors in its energy form flickered uncertainly. Refusal is not considered, it said slowly. All species choose harmony when they understand its benefits. It is the logical path. It is the only path. Maybe for you, Jiwan said quietly. But humans have a different idea about what makes life worth living. The temperature in the council chamber seemed to drop several degrees. All 17 alien representatives turned to stare at the humans with their empty, emotionless eyes. Captain, Veltar said, and for the first time its voice carried a hint of something that might have been anger. You do not understand the consequences of disrupting galactic balance. Chaos leads to conflict. Conflict leads to suffering. We have eliminated suffering through proper organization. You've eliminated life itself, Parkhana said, her diplomatic training finally abandoning her completely. You've turned entire civilizations into robots following a script. That's when the first explosion echoed through Harmony Prime. The blast came from somewhere deep in the station, in the hidden levels where the discarded lived. Emergency lights began flashing and alarms started wailing throughout the corridors. High Coordinator Veltar's energy form blazed with bright, chaotic colors. What is happening? This is impossible. Our security systems are perfect. A second explosion shook the station, this one closer to the council chamber. Through the chamber's transparent walls, the humans could see aliens running through the corridors. But these weren't the calm, controlled representatives they had met before. These aliens were shouting, arguing, and moving with passionate urgency. Dr. Lee Mina smiled grimly. It's the discarded. They heard about our conversation with you. They know that someone finally said no to your perfect system. More explosions followed, each one closer than the last. The 17 alien representatives sat frozen in their chairs, unable to comprehend what was happening. For 2,000 years, their system had run perfectly. No one had ever rebelled. No one had ever refused to be balanced. Captain Jiwan activated his communication device and sent an emergency signal to Earth. "This is Captain Jiwan to Earth Command. The Confederation is hostile. They want to control our entire civilization. Recommend immediate military preparations." As if responding to his words, the space around Harmony Prime suddenly filled with human ships. Earth had been monitoring the situation and was ready to act if their diplomatic mission failed. The perfect station's synchronized rotation began to wobble as more explosions erupted throughout its structure. Species that had been suppressed for centuries were finally remembering what it felt like to be angry, to fight back, to refuse to accept someone else's definition of harmony. High Coordinator Veltar turned its chaotic energy form toward Captain Jiwan. "You have brought chaos to our order. You have destroyed 2,000 years of perfect balance." Jiwan looked back at the alien leader without fear. "We brought choice, and sometimes, choosing to fight is the most human thing you can do." The storm that would reshape the galaxy had finally begun. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. The Confederation had impressive technology and massive resources, but they had one fatal weakness: they had forgotten how to think like warriors. For 2,000 years, they had solved every problem through careful planning and negotiation. They had no idea how to deal with an enemy that refused to follow their rules. Captain Kim Ji-won's fleet didn't fight like the aliens expected. Instead of attacking their military bases or trying to conquer their planets, the humans did something completely different. They went straight to the hidden levels of every Confederation world and started broadcasting to the discarded populations. Dr. Lee Mina's voice echoed through underground tunnels and forgotten districts across 17 different worlds. "You are not alone," she said in dozens of different alien languages. "Others have said no to the system. Others have chosen to be themselves instead of what they were told to be. It's time to remember who you really are." The response was immediate and overwhelming. On the crystal world of Nexar Prime, artists who had been hidden for decades began creating again. There, works filling the sterile cities with color and emotion. On the mathematical world of Vorthak Central, scientists started asking forbidden questions and developing new theories that challenged the established order. The Confederation's leaders tried to stop the rebellions, but they discovered that their perfect system had a serious design flaw. They had become so dependent on balance and harmony that they couldn't handle chaos. When millions of aliens across the galaxy suddenly started thinking for themselves, the carefully organized society began to fall apart. High Coordinator Veltar sent message after message to Captain Jiwan, demanding that he stop the destruction of their peaceful civilization. But Jiwan had seen what their peace really meant. He had walked through the hidden levels of Harmony Prime and talked to the aliens who had been erased from history because they dared to be different. The final battle took place not in space, but in the council chamber of Harmony Prime itself. The station was no longer the perfectly synchronized symbol of harmony it had once been. Explosions had damaged several of the rings, and they wobbled irregularly as they rotated. But somehow the imperfect movement looked more beautiful and alive than the mechanical precision of before. Captain Jiwan walked into the council chamber flanked by representatives of the discarded from every species in the Confederation. Keth Ara, the crystal bird whose body flickered with unstable emotions, stood beside Borzel, the furry poet whose songs had been banned for making people think dangerous thoughts. There were dozens of others, artists, scientists, philosophers, and dreamers who had been hidden away for refusing to accept the system. High Coordinator Veltar's energy form was no longer the calm, controlled presence it had been when the humans first arrived. Now it swirled with chaotic colors that reflected confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear. "You have destroyed everything," Veltar said, its voice carrying harmonics of pain and loss. 2,000 years of perfect balance gone. You have brought war back to the galaxy. You have brought suffering and conflict and chaos. Ambassador Park Hana, who had found her courage during the weeks of fighting, stepped forward to answer. "We brought choice," she said firmly. And yes, choice sometimes leads to conflict, but it also leads to growth, to creativity, to the possibility of becoming something better than you were before. Our way eliminated war, Veltar insisted. Our way brought peace to billions of beings. Your way eliminated life itself, replied Cathara, the crystal bird's body blazing with bright, defiant colors. You turned us all into machines following someone else's program. That's not peace. That's death without dying. Around the chamber, other discarded aliens began to speak. Each one told their story of being removed from society because they didn't fit the perfect balance. Each one described what it felt like to have their individuality surgically removed in the name of harmony. Captain Jiwan listened to their voices and realized that this was what had been missing from the Confederation all along. Not the perfect harmony of identical thoughts, but the beautiful chaos of different voices working together by choice rather than force. We're not going to destroy your civilization, Jiwan told Veltar. We're going to give it back its soul. The Confederation can continue to exist, but it needs to change. Instead of forcing everyone to be the same, it needs to celebrate what makes each species different. The reconstruction took years, but it was worth the effort. The new Galactic Alliance kept the best parts of the old Confederation, the cooperation between species, the sharing of resources, the peaceful resolution of conflicts, but it threw away the worst parts, the forced conformity, the censorship of individual expression, the systematic removal of anyone who dared to be different. The 17 synchronized rings of Harmony Prime were rebuilt as an interconnected web of platforms that moved in complex, unpredictable patterns. Sometimes they came close together, sometimes they drifted apart, but they always remained connected. It was beautiful precisely because it was imperfect, dynamic, and alive. On worlds across the galaxy, aliens who had lived in the shadows for generations stepped into the light and began to create again. Art galleries opened in cities that had been sterile for centuries. Music filled the air on planets where only official announcements had been heard before. Scientists made discoveries that would have been impossible under the old system's rigid rules. Humanity had brought the storm to the galaxy, but from that storm came something wonderful. A civilization that celebrated differences instead of erasing them, that found strength in diversity instead of weakness in uniformity. And in the depths of space, on worlds where creativity had been forbidden and passion regulated away, beings looked up at the stars and dared to dream again. The galaxy had found a new kind of balance, not the artificial perfection of control but the natural harmony of freedom.